down as a consultation call, and obviously we just need to work through exactly whether we have sufficient representation from elected members in a moment, but we'll do that. I am conscious, just before we start, I am conscious that I think this might be the biggest pack that we've had as a committee, but don't that shouldn't put us off. I do think we ought to make a particular effort to focus on those things that are new, those things that require our consideration and or agreement. I know that some of the items in the agenda are effectively by exception in terms of changes to accounts, and I think treasury management is probably an example of something which doesn't necessarily require a huge amount of discussion time. So maybe we can help each other in terms of time management. If we aim to get to agenda item number 8, which I think is internal audit, by about 12:15, I think that will be pretty good, and that would give us a good chance of covering off everything without rushing, if that's okay. Right. So first things first. Can we just have a quick canter, Andrea, as to members on the call? I can see Richard, I've seen Joe, I've seen Kevin.
Yes, that's correct.
Councillor Baker-Rogers is likely to be late. We've had apologies from Councillor Mundry.
Apologies from Councillor Ross and Councillor Shaw.
Okay.
And Darren Oldham also sent his apologies.
But Caroline's here.
Caroline's here, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Did we hear back from Councillor Hussain?
It was tentative, so.
Okay. So where does that leave us in terms of our ability to formally proceed, Julie, given that we haven't got any elected members at the moment?
Well, for the time being, Chair, you can proceed as a consultation call with the Finance Director, and if necessary, we can consult with those other members after the meeting just to make sure that they're satisfied with the outcomes from today.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. Helps bring a bit of clarity in terms of attendance, so thank you, Julie. Okay, good. Second point on the agenda is declarations of interest. So if anybody has anything in terms of agenda items which causes them to believe there is an actual or perceived conflict, then please flag that and we'll make the necessary arrangements. Take it that's okay. So item 3 is minutes from previous meeting. So I shall canter through those. There's a couple of points that I just wanted to bring out, and immediately after we've gone through minutes, perhaps we can revisit the point about election of vice chair, just to see whether we've made any progress in that regard, or whether we can make any progress in that regard. So let me just canter through the minutes. If anybody has anything to add or query or challenge, please do so as we go through, or at the end. So I'll come back to the point in item 4 about election of vice chair. The minutes cover obviously a detailed discussion we had around risk and the risk register, covers the internal audit update. I know that the pack contains additional visibility in terms of internal audit activity going forward, as well as recent reports, so that captures the points out of the minutes, I think. External audit update makes reference to updates and changes in respect to the accounts, and Paul will cover those, I think, later on. The annual governance statement, the draft of that is obviously included in the pack, so we'll cover that. There was a specific point in the agenda when we get to the governance statement. Was going through it. Perhaps we can revisit the point about partnership governance. I did see reference around partnership governance in the draft that's in the pack. I can't remember whether that was different to the previous version. So if whoever's presenting that, if you can just make a note, and we'll cover that at the time. And the final point on the minutes was the monitoring of committee effectiveness, which we've spoken about now a couple of times. And I know there's been discussions offline as well with one or two members about the detail of that process. So I think Joanna's going to talk us through what the self-assessment looks like and next steps later on in the agenda. So I'm comfortable with the minutes, unless anybody else has any particular comment or challenge. We'll cover Vice Chair, the necessary appointment of a Vice Chair. We've had a number of discussions on this topic offline. I know that a couple of you have kindly provided some feedback in respect of your own ability to support that, and I appreciate the comments and the openness. So I don't have anything, members, that I would classify as progress, I'm afraid, in this regard. It's still outstanding. It's still something we need to address, but I don't think we can do much other than carry it forward and commit to maybe making contact again with added vigour between this meeting and the next meeting in July in order to identify somebody that can support us. Does that sound like a sensible way forward? Good. Maybe having seen me do it, none of you want to go anywhere near it. I mean, that's perfectly understandable. I get that. So item 4, Daniela, is corporate risk register. Oh, sorry. I know that I know Richard has provided some comments and thoughts against agenda items. Thank you for that. I think you've had a response to those, Richard. If there is anything out of that list that you want to bring up, don't hesitate to do that. Just because you sent it through in advance doesn't mean you can't bring it up. But I do have a couple of points on risk register and deep dive. They weren't necessarily worthy of sharing beforehand, but we'll pick them up as part of the discussion. So Daniela, over to you for risk register.
Morning, everyone.
Deep dive.
Brilliant. Thanks for the feedback, Richard. I think it was really useful, and we'll bring one of the examples to life as well. I think it'll be useful for everyone, really. So just to give you a bit of an update since we last met in terms of the corporate risk register. The environment is quite similar to the last time we met, so we're very much recognising the fiscal environment and monitoring those funding risks, as well as looking at the implications with the announcement of the cancellation of HS2 Phase 2 and the policy announcement for Network North. One of the main changes that you'll notice within the corporate risk register this time is around the endorsement of the STP risk. So you'll notice that that's gone from a red to an amber. And the reason for this is primarily due to the good progress that's been made in terms of the STP, and that's now scheduled and on track to be presented to TFN board for approval in March 20th. So the next sort of phase for us after that, really, in terms of the process, is that risk, with the assumption, hopefully, that the STP is adopted in March. That risk will retire, and we will then consider the potential risks around the implementation and the outcomes of the STP. Really, that's the next process for that. But you'll notice a change in direction there. And then, obviously, in terms of the finalisation, the next set of reviews will look at the finalisation of the 24-25 business plan and the updated milestones, and how the corporate risk register aligns to that. Some of the other sort of key discussions that we're having at the moment as well is you'll know that we have a confirmed funding allocation that takes us to March 25. So some of the focus and considerations are beyond that point, really, you know, working with partners and looking at those future opportunities and priorities in support of the STP, really. So that's some conversations and discussions that are going on at the moment. I think they're some of the main things that you'd find useful. But I think it'd be useful just to discuss one of some feedback that Richard gave back, and that was around, in terms of the risk register this time round, there was and the trend, there was only one risk that changed in terms of the trend, and you might see more. And there's a number of reasons for that. One of the reasons is, as we've discussed before, around how many the number of risks that are not in TFN's direct control, but also the recognising the environment and the operating environment that TFN work in at the moment, and currently how and the pace of that. So in terms of the time frames where you might not see much change in assessment of risk within this quarter, next quarter you'll probably see a change in direction, and that's primarily due to the updated business plan, the key milestones, but also with the adoption, the hopeful adoption of the STP. So you'll see a change of direction there. But just to bring that to life a little bit, so if you think about 916, which is our risk around medium term sustainability, so it's our funding risk. It's a risk that is outside of TFN's control, but it's a risk that we face, and it's a red risk. And there's a number of actions and the controls that we have in place there, such as structured engagement with government officials and decision makers, demonstrating value for money, business planning, conducting the budget. And it's all things that we're working through, but you wouldn't necessarily expect to see that change every quarter, because we've got a confirmed funding allocation of 2 years. But you might see, obviously, towards the end of that period, you might see the assessment of the risk change. However, during each sort of monthly review session, what you will look at is those actions and then controls, and is the engagement sort of, is it effective? Is everything that we're doing in terms of those actions and controls, is there anything over above that we can do? Are we making progress? So even though the assessment might not change, it's very much still reviewed in line with whether we need to include any new actions or controls within that.
Could I just make a point on that, where we've got quite a lot of ongoing actions, and I fully appreciate what you're saying, Daniela, but I wondered whether it would be useful when we put in that the control is ongoing engagement or attendance at a certain meeting, is whether or not, when we're reporting it to this committee, we could maybe add in there when the last attendance at a meeting was, or when the last engagement was. Because if we're sort of assessing the control as being an ongoing one, to have that evidence of an ongoing
I know what you mean, Jo, and it's something that Richard has raised about the ongoing actions. And you will notice in the risk register, we do, because of the nature, we do have a lot of things that are ongoing. But
absolutely,
what I'm hoping does for you, especially today, you'll see this come to life when we present on the cyber deep dive, where you've got a summary of actions and where they're ongoing. We'll delve into the detail of those actions to say, well, this policy was updated on, so then you can gain that level of assurance that
absolutely.
it's just the way the report is designed.
Yeah, I completely get that, and I think it's just, if we're saying it's an ongoing control, having additional evidence of the ongoing nature of that control, and I think that would help.
Joe, leave that with us. We'll have a little bit of a think about that, but I'm hoping what the deep dive process does, because we do. There's only so many corporate risks, and we do. The idea is over the time we look at them all, and over the ones that we've looked at so far, we would see the tracking that progress. Hopefully, and if we don't, and if we need that further level of assurance, then we can provide that detail, because those discussions take place during the risk reviews. But yeah, that's it's a point that Richard has also raised. But hopefully, as we move into the deep dive, particularly on cyber, you can gain more assurance in that area.
I just think it's something that when I've been involved in managing particular risks, that maybe there's been a system whereby the controls around that risk, there's been a requirement for the people managing those risks to report in to say, yes, we did attend that meeting, or yes, we did put that report in. Yes, we, so it's that sort of thing, really.
Yeah, definitely. I understand you. And also, Joe, do you know the assurance report that we did?
Yes.
So we did that assurance exercise last time round. So we've got the sort of the tool that was used for that, and then that holds evidence as well that shows what was done when and how and things like. And we can share that. That's not a problem.
Perfect. Thank you.
Was that you done, Daniela, in terms of your introduction?
I think that's it for me. Yeah. If anyone's got any questions before we move into the deep dive.
Can I just say hello to Councillor Baker Rogers? I'm not sure, Joanna, when you joined. I do apologise.
I was here at 12 minutes past 11.
Well done.
So I'm just hoping that I haven't missed voting on anything. I'm very sorry, but I had to go to a different meeting. I knew it was going to be very tight, so I am here now.
We counted through the minutes. I'm assuming there are no declarations of conflict from your point of view. I think we're going to revisit the point about vice chair, Joanna. We obviously need one. I'm not sure we've made a huge amount of progress to date, but we can maybe take that offline and revisit that with.
Okay, thank you.
If that's okay. Has anybody else got any questions on risk register?
I think Kevin and Richard are hands up waiting for.
Go ahead. Kevin
first, then no Richard.
Thanks, Graham. It was just a general point, really, on the strategic risk register in terms of the sort of lack of any specific risks around the political environment and horizon scanning in terms of the general election. I would have probably expected to see something more specific rather than it being subsumed within the sort of influencing and, conversations with senior civil servants type of control and actions. So it was just a point around that, and particularly, most organisations are now sort of building horizon scanning into their risk registers, particularly around some of the global impacts of Gaza, Ukraine, etc., and potential impacts on supply chain flow, etc., and whether there are any mitigations that we need to be thinking about there. So it's just really a general comment on that. And just one specific was around the control level and actions 2683 and a medium action there around TFN restating the need for full HS2. And I suppose I was just questioning the sort of the relevance of that now, given where we are with the national announcements from government, and from a sort of efficiency and effectiveness perspective, is that still something that the organisation ought to be putting resources around.
Yeah, so Kevin, in response to your first question, thanks for that, around the political environment, it's very much something that is discussed and on our radar. In terms of the risk that links to it, it is 879, and it is around, the government's commitments to STBs and the reduction in remit powers and potential. There's also the other one around policy, and it's something that we are sort of discussing in terms of not just within risk reviews, but as part of TFN as a whole and the environment that we face at the moment. I think in terms of any further actions, I think we're doing. We've had the discussions as part of the risk reviews, and they are what is recorded within 879 and the one around policy is very much it's what we're confident with, and we feel that we don't need to raise another specific risk on top of that. And those are discussions that have been had at CEO level and director level as well. So we are sort of confident with that at the moment. And then the other one was around the HS2. So we have, Caroline, you might be able to come in on this if needed, but it is something that we still, not that it is still in discussions around that. It's something that hasn't been sort of closed out in terms of our discussions within rail at the moment. So it's not an action at the moment that we want to retire. So I think things might change but it still sort of sits in very well with the environment that we're looking at in terms of those proposals for Network North and HS2 Phase 2. Caroline, did you want to come in on that one? Or?
Yeah, it's just that HS2 in full does link in with our Northern Powerhouse Rail programme. So that is why we do need HS2 in full and why it remains on the risk register.
I think just to add to it, I think the point is we've yet to develop exactly what the future is going to look like. So whilst we're doing that, we still retain the past. I agree, Kevin. It's not the likelihood of us restating HS2 is probably nil. But what we're talking about is what does the solution look like? How do we hook into NPR and NPR full? And what's the revised solution as a consequence of IRP and Network North? What does it come out? So we'll pivot off that in future. So yes, it will change, and it will be a different plan will be adopted in due course. But that's been worked on as we speak.
Thanks for that. Very comprehensive. Thank you,
Joanna. Thank you, Kevin.
Yes. Sorry that I'm coming into this conversation towards the end. But I just wanted to double check, have we got on the risk register the fact that the government's going to turn off the analogue phone network at some point soon?
We have, in terms of the specifics on the corporate risk register, no, we haven't got that as a specific.
Right. Do you think that needs to be included? Because anything that we use that uses an analogue phone line will cease to work when the government switches it off. I can't remember the exact date, I'm sorry.
Don't worry, do you want to leave that one?
But it's something we flagged up at our audit committee.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that, Joanna. We'll have a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Danny, did you have a question? Sorry, Graham.
Just on that point, sorry, there's we don't have analog phone lines. That's it.
All right. Okay.
Does that mean the phone that I've anyway? But sorry, go on, Joanna.
I was going to say, right, that's great, but I think we need to put that somewhere so that it shows we have actually considered it. Yeah. Because to other organisations, it's a massive risk.
Okay.
I think we'd probably capture it at a functional risk level,
yeah,
so that it's been mitigated.
Yeah.
You're right. I completely agree, Joanna. Should articulate it and say it's been how it's been managed. Good.
Thank you.
No, I thought Danny was raising his hand to say that he's too young to know what an analog phone is. Yeah, good. Thank you for raising that. I just on the point that Kevin made and the point that you responded to in terms of the relevance of risk. I think there is a danger that your risks start to look rather outdated because they refer to an organisation from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I was reflecting on the wording that you've got for risk 310, which is around a reduced level of influence. I mean, if you change the wording of that risk to not a reduced influence, but just a changed influence, it alters the way that I think you sort of think at a corporate level about the threat, and it might also alter the scoring of that risk, because you don't necessarily as an organisation want to retain that original ambition about influence over a particular outcome. You've recognised that things have changed, and so your ambitions have changed. So I think some of what Kevin was saying was sort of linked to this, is that the wording in the risk register, the tone of the risk register, has got to remain reflective of the organisation as it changes and repositions. I think pivot was a word you used, Paul, which I do enjoy. So yeah, just a thought in terms of the next review of that internally, maybe in terms of.
Thanks, Graham.
Good. Is that? I think that's us. Unless you had anything else to add, Richard. I think your hand was up earlier. I don't know if you're okay.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, mine's just more of an observation. It's not a specific question. It's just when I raise the points via email, the risk is that we have risks which stagnate. So that's why I just made the point. And Daniela, as ever, the risk report is really comprehensive. So thanks for that. It's just my worry was that we had a number of risks which were all kind of flatlining, which when we've got 58 ongoing mitigating actions, hopefully they'll come to fruition and we'll see some of these risks drop down. Every risk register will have risks. Every organisational risk register will have risks on it, which you don't 100% control. Cyber being one, which we're going to talk about, because that's out of that's the being subject to a cyber attack is out of our control. The other point was just maybe something to think about in the future is looking at the telemetry of risk, which will pick up Graham's point of how long has it been on the register and how much has it changed over time, because that would really, I suppose it's the next level, but it's looking at each time you assess the risk from its birth, as it will, has it moved from the date you first assessed it? So you could look at the old ones and say, blimey, back in 1982, we thought this risk and we've monitored it and it's not moved at all. So therefore, is it worth us continuing to monitor it if we're not actually actioning it? So I suppose just points, but overall, thanks for your report.
Great, thanks, Richard.
Yeah, good. I mean,
everyone happy to.
I've said I use a phrase frequently, and I don't apologise for repeating it, but risk only has meaning within the context of the organisation's objectives. As those objectives change, the risks really ought to move with that. And so I think a number of us are kind of saying a similar sort of thing, but maybe using different words or through a different lens. So it's the currency of the risk register. I think that's a if we can get to a point where we're happy that we're challenging the currency of it and its relevance. And, yeah, good, excellent. Sorry, right, cyber time, I believe.
Yeah, so it's probably useful for us to, I think, with this. So obviously we've shared the slides, these 3 slides, and one of them, the 3rd slide's got the detail about the corporate risk that we faced in relation to cyber. And I think what comes up from Joe and Richard, I think it'd be useful to have a sort of more detailed look at those actions, so them controls that we've got there, so those 8 controls and how we're progressing with those and on track. So I'm going to ask Danny to kindly join us now and just to give members a little bit of an update on those controls, and then we can go into some questions after that, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle, and thanks for that comment, Graham. You've made me feel a lot better about turning 30. So
well done.
So yeah, I'll work through the actions from 1 to 8 and just give you a bit more extra detail around them. So the first action around that risk is the IT and data policies that are in place and reviewed regularly. So there is a number of policies that we've had in place since TFN was formed. The security policy and data protection policy, retention policy, and a few others, but they are reviewed annually. But what we do tend to do, if anything else comes up, whether at our regular IT meetings or SMC meetings with other management, where we need to kind of capture that and make changes on the fly, we do that. So some of them are reviewed more frequently than annually. On the point around training to all staff on those policies, if there is changes made, I'll use the data protection policy as an example there. So following GDPR audit at the end of 2022, we were asked to make some changes in collaboration with Julie's team, the legal department, around the GDPR policy. So once that was refreshed, the documents recirculated through management and through staff via the intranet and email, and then we did put out some mandatory training. That was kind of a few questions, kind of quiz on the updated policy, just to make sure that we understood that the staff had understood the changes that were made. So that then covers us for future audits as well. In terms of the communications plan, that is something where it depends on the level of threat, for example, or what kind of comms we need to put out. The communications plan does change slightly. Generally, if it's something kind of low risk, we have a small sort of cab between myself, the security officer, and our IT officer. And we have a quick meeting in terms of agreement on comms which need to go out, how to structure them, if it's just an email to all staff or if it's something that needs to be pushed, like a notification pop up on the desktop, for example, if it's something a bit more severe, like a cyber attack. If it's something, for example, if it's like an on-site planned maintenance where comms need to go out, we'll discuss that with Martin, the chief exec. And once that's cleared, we work with our media team where we have an internal comms strategy to kind of phase that out. On to action 4, the monitoring and compliance checks. So this kind of goes a bit more into the cyber security part of it. So phishing attacks is put in there as an example. There's a number of daily compliance checks that are performed when your device is switched on in the morning. If any of these compliance checks are failed, the device itself won't be able to access any TFN resources. So once that does happen, that kind of covers us from any data being potentially maliciously accessed or stolen. An alert is sent to the IT team, and then one of my staff will reach out to the owner of that device and usually call them up and just talk through why the compliance is flagged up. Sometimes it's something very simple, like a security update's not been installed, or the antivirus software's flagged up something. But the device is blocked immediately, so there's no kind of risk there of them getting onto files and folders and taking information. The phishing side of that, in the example mentioned, TFN is targeted, as all organisations are. I think over the last few years since COVID and the introduction of the hybrid working model across the UK and the world, really, phishing has become obviously a major problem for a lot of organisations. And yeah, cyber attacks have become more prevalent now. We are lucky that obviously we're a Microsoft company, so they do tend to have the best security when it comes to these things, and the package that we pay for, Microsoft Defender, does cover us to like a kind of 99% degree there. So any attachments and things are immediately blocked. We have an approved list of senders, which is usually councils and different local authorities that TFN work with, where they're kind of sifted through, and then anything else is kind of checked in a more rigorous way. The only thing we've had kind of breaking through on that level in terms of phishing is links and things in emails. We do regularly have to send out comms to staff, because this is something that we do get, kind of with examples of what emails to look out for. We have a phishing group as well. That's kind of a subgroup of the IT team, where we receive any of these emails and we block them to ensure that there's no further attacks sent from that company. Onto the monitoring security updates. Again, with being a Microsoft company with very good oversight by the Microsoft Security Centre, all of the devices that TFN staff use are regularly checked in on kind of a 15-minute interval. There's a quick scan done to make sure the device is online. Any kind of virus alerts or scans or things that pop up, we get emailed immediately to say there's an X device has received a notification. It is kind of an automatic policy that's in place, so as soon as something like that is flagged, the devices begin performing automatically the security scans and things, and then we reach out to that person, just kind of have a call with them. Usually we'll log a ticket on our help desk and just go through a few steps that we've got kind of listed out for my staff to follow, to ask them what they were doing, if they potentially open an email link or a website, and then we can again send comms out to staff to kind of warn them if it's a particular website that maybe staff use, just to be aware. In terms of Action 6, we've got business continuity plan. The last major change to the business continuity plan in terms of IT and system reviews was after COVID. Again, it was a major change because we changed the hybrid working model, and I think the major benefit we've got is we work as a cloud company, so we have no physical infrastructure on site anymore. When I previously worked at TFGM, they had the risk of, they had a massive room where it was just full of all their servers, network information. If that ever went down on the site, if there's a fire, etc., there was obviously that massive risk there of everyone panicking and trying to restore the data. We don't have that risk, which is a massive bonus to us. As long as our staff have a Wi-Fi connection, they can work from anywhere in the world, as we have had people do. There are security. I'll go on to kind of talk around that anywhere in the world part in a minute, because we do have security around that as well. But yeah, generally, Microsoft are very, very good. The way it works is all of our information at the current is hosted in the south of the UK, at a data centre there. That's got an automatic failback to the north of the UK, and failing that, it then falls over to Western Europe. So it would take quite an attack for us to completely lose our systems. That's not to say we don't have some downtime with Microsoft products, such as Microsoft Word, Office. Every now and then there'll be some drops, but we've had nothing longer than, I think we've had a couple of 30-minute drops over the last 12 months on some products, but nothing more than that in our help desk system's been logged. So we've been okay with that. Insurance cover, obviously this was mainly done by the legal team, but that was put in place. We kind of review that. I think it's an annual review. It might have gone to 2 years now, just to make sure if there is any kind of ransomware that goes through. But I think once I just follow up on the last point around multi-factor authentication, it's very difficult for us to kind of fall into that trap with the way we work. The information that TFN holds, I know there's an article sent through kind of around the amount that organisations are targeted and attacked these days, but with the data that TFN holds, with a lot of it being publicly accessible commercial data, we don't have that high level of risk in terms of holding bank details. We're not selling products. We don't have people's addresses and things really knocking around. So we are quite low risk in terms of people wanting to steal information from us. But then that leads me nicely onto the last point, which is multi-factor authentication, which for those of you who may not, you'll have used it with other products. When you try and sign into Amazon or something, for example, it asks you for a text message to your phone, and it'll ask you to put in a code that they text you. And what that does is kind of the forefront of account security in this day and age now is, unless someone steals your mobile phone and your password, it's extremely difficult to get into anyone's account. We have had some passwords stolen over the last couple of years, and that's blocked it at the first hurdle. So we do get an alert if anyone's account is signed in from what's called an unusual location. We get a risky sign in. So, for example, if I believe Paul's account got done at one point where someone tried to sign in from California in the US, and it was immediately blocked because obviously straight away it flags up knowing that Paul isn't working from California, unfortunately. And yeah, it asked him for the text code. They couldn't input that, so the account's then locked until we can take action and contact Paul and just reset his password. So, like I said, there have been some passwords stolen, but they've never been able to breach any accounts. And while that's in place, I feel like we're extremely secure on that front in terms of account hacking. I was brought in originally as infrastructure and security, so that is my background. So I was the person who implemented all of the multi-factor authentication and network security around that. So it's kind of a bonus now that in my role I can help oversee that with the team and have a deeper level of understanding, so ensure that we're on top of that. Additional assurance that I'd like to just provide around that is we do have regular penetration testing as well, which is something I've picked up from previous places I've worked on. And what that is we pay a company that's got a specific skill set of ethical hacking, where they will come in, they'll try and break into TFN systems, they'll try and steal data, hack accounts, hack Wi-Fi, whatever they want to do, and try and break into every kind of nook and cranny we've got, then provide a full report of kind of where our leaks are, so to speak, and how to improve that. It's a very good way to ensure we are secure. And the most recent one was carried out just following the RSM audit. So we had it in January. We had very good feedback on that. There was one risk which I spoke to Daniela about already, but it's something that I think we're going to again put in as kind of a accepted risk, and it was just around access to some of our storage accounts which our analysts use, which has trained data in terms of modelling and journey times. Currently, we give them access for 8 hours before they have to request again, and the recommended action was that we knock that down to 1 hour. But I think we've kind of agreed that we're better keeping it at the 8-hour day window, because otherwise it would be quite a lot of work for us to keep having to speak to them and every hour of the day to give them access again to that data. I know if you've got any questions on that, I know I kind of rushed through that, but there's a lot to get through. So if there's anything, I'm happy to provide follow-ups. Joanna?
Thanks, Danny.
Okay, thank you for that, Danny. That was really helpful. I've just got a couple of questions. Do we have a whistle blower policy linked to cybercrime?
Yes, there is a whistleblower policy in place at the moment. Yes.
Has it ever had to be used?
Very recently. I may have to defer to Julie on this because I don't know exactly where this up to. It was very, very recent. There was something logged around this, but I'm not sure if it actually ended up being that. It was only in the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
But other than that, prior to that, nothing during my tenure.
Okay, and it's great you're getting these experts in to try and hack into our systems, and they're finding that they can't really do that. But I'm just wondering, do you test the business continuity plan as well? As in, someone does manage to actually hack in, or steal some data. Have you tested those controls?
Yes, so there's a kind of an extra layer of control in place on all TFN. This was something we implemented a couple of years ago to kind of defend against that. It was all TFN documents now, when you create, say, a spreadsheet with information in, or a Word document, you have to give it a rating. So whether it's confidential data, it's kind of a classification of what that is. If that is sent inside or outside the organisation, we have a full breakdown of who that's been sent to. And if anything's marked as confidential, it's flagged in the IT team and what addresses that's gone to. So if there is anything unusual there, we do receive alerts as well. So if it's going to people, for example, that aren't in our approved partners of, combined authorities, other councils, if it's sent to a random address, we do receive an alert around that. Just to kind of say there's been confidential information sent this way. So that's a kind of layer of cover on that we do regularly test.
Okay, so my final question is, have you considered having an independent audit of our cybercrime processes and procedures, just against best practice, just someone that can take a holistic view of the whole system and of our whole setup, just to give us that independent assurance that we're doing everything we can? Thank you.
Parts of that have been covered in other audits. There's stuff touched on by RSM around that area in the recent audit, and again, part of it is covered in the annual penetration testing. It could be something we could look at over the next 12 months potentially, or the year after, as more of a focus on that particular area. I do agree, but I think over the last few months, the kind of combination of those two audits and assessments has covered that quite well.
Okay, thank you very much, Danny.
Thank you.
Joe, I think you have your hand up.
I did. I just wanted one of the things that sprung to mind, and there's probably specifics around it, is when we're doing consultations, and therefore there might be quite a bit of personal data, I'm assuming, do we use external organisations to do things like that, or is it data that we collect ourselves, and then does that have a sort of specific risk that we have to deal with?
In what way though?
For example.
In what? Sorry, you cut out a bit there.
In terms of GDPR.
Right. Okay. So there is. I mean, it depends on the consultation that's in place and what kind of data is being shared. Generally, the legal team will work in combination with us there. And
Joanne's got her hand up, Danny. She might be able to provide.
There you go, Joanne.
Are you just on mute, Joanne?
Sorry, Joanne, I caught your conversation, what you said, your question, but could you just repeat it again, just so I'm very clear on what you're saying, please? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. What I was saying was when we do, because I know we do quite a lot of consultation.
Yeah.
And when we do those consultations, are there things that we use external parties to do that, and therefore to some degree the GDPR risk is outsourced, or is that data that we're collecting ourselves, and therefore there's a risk inherent with us?
Yes. So with consultations, in any event, if we are going to ask a service provider to contract with us and personal data is being processed, then under the data protection legislation, we're required to have a contract with them setting out what the data processing, how they can process the data, what to do in the event of a data breach. And we've got those, I'll call them data processing agreements. Some people call them data sharing agreements. We do have those in place with our contracts. And then, so we do have those in place, and that's what we, yeah.
So essentially, it's generally a third party, and when we contract with those third parties, we will confirm that the procedures are there in order to protect that data.
Yeah, we'll confirm that the procedures are there in order to protect the data. And we also set out what type of data they can process, how they can process it, how long it's retained by them, etc. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Kevin, over to you.
I haven't really got a question. I had a number of questions around vulnerability testing, but Danny's presentation has covered that thoroughly. I'm really impressed with the deep dive presentation, and I'm coming away with substantive assurance. I feel in terms of where the organisation is in terms of its cyber threat security. So really impressed with it. Just wanted to thank Danny for that, and I won't press on with the vulnerability questions because they've all been covered.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm not sure I've seen you smile before, so that's a good outcome, Danny. I think. Richard.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Danny. I did have a number of things written down. I'll be brief because I could talk about cyber all day long. It's one of my pet likes in terms of getting to the bottom of assurances. So, so on my list, I think you've covered it. Cloud-based, that's great. No legacy kit on site, great. Data center fallback, failover, brilliant. Patch management, pen testing, you covered. Phishing group, I like that because I'm a keen fisherman, so I would quite like to get involved in that. Low data risk in terms of the low data risk, I get that, but sometimes people will attack you just for the hell of it. What my question, I suppose, was, I think it was touched on before, was two key things. Training, because the human element is always the weakest link in any system. Someone will click on a hyperlink on an email they don't recognize and cause you nightmares, Danny, I'm sure. So what I was going to say is, on your deep dive originally when I looked at it, I do like to see dates rather than the term ongoing, and I do appreciate some of the things are ongoing, but some things must have a due date in terms of wanting to land multi-factor MFA. We're just going through that because we were subject to a cyber attack in August. It was limited in terms of its depth and length of recovery, but we went for a new antivirus security company called CloudStrike. So they provide us with extra cover. The question I'm warming up to is, I suppose, have you thought about, or have you got about rolling? It was mentioned rolling this all up under one heading, ISO 27001. Is that something that you're gonna consider, or have you tried to get that accreditation? Because that will give you that external badge, so to speak, of all the good things that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as that progresses, it's something that we need to keep updated with. It has been done previously already here, so it is something that we kind of stay on top of. And just with the touch on there with the multi-factor authentication, obviously that has all been implemented when I joined the organisation. So a lot of it, I completely get what you're saying with the dates. It is a bit of a difficult one with cyber, as it's just the world we live in now. So we keep setting dates, then we'll keep having to just continue them on indefinitely. And I think as time progresses, it's just going to become a bigger thing for all organisations. Unfortunately, with AI and things, I think attacks are going to become more prevalent. And like you say, the human error side of it is still the major risk. We do try and we have small like training quizzes that we put out for things on phishing. We'll send out emails highlighting exactly what to look for to staff, making sure that the sender address is someone and it's not kind of come from a random thing. And, if you're not expecting a link from a bank, for example, or something, just maybe call IT and say, can you just have a quick look at this for me before I do anything? And I think at the moment it's something we have got quite a good grasp on because of the size of the organisation. It's small enough that we still kind of know everyone at this point, whereas, like I say, TFGM, where I worked previously, there was 1,000 staff and security risks were a daily thing, because it'd be someone at a bus station in Wigan clicking something and then he doesn't know who to phone, and then it's much easier at the moment for the size of us, and depending how that'll be a challenge, I think, as you've kind of rightly pointed out, over the next few years, if TFN does continue to grow again, something that we'll need to manage.
Is training mandatory then for all staff?
Yeah, so we have things on the intranet that are mandatory. For example, with the data protection update, it's just like a quiz, making sure people understand GDPR around IT as well with the phishing. And if those quizzes aren't completed, it's just like the line managers are notified, and then we just have a quick chat saying, can you just have a word and make sure they just go through this? And it's 15-20 minutes of the time to maybe pick up a few things and make sure they're happy.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. I can't see anybody else's. Thanks, Danny. That was. I guess my challenge is a complacency one. Don't take that as a negative necessarily. So when I look at the assessment, the scoring, the narrative around cyber, its position in relation to other risks, I think there is a challenge there around. You read a lot of external information about cyber. Cyber is always top 3, top 5. RSM's emerging risk report talks about the increasing relevance of cyber risk last year versus this coming year. And you look at cyber from the TFN perspective, and it's a very middle of the road risk. And I think there is a question there that management should ask. Why is it other people's top priority and not ours? I get the point about data risk. I think the danger there is that that's your assessment of the usefulness of the data. It's not the assessment of an external actor who's looking at transport infrastructure generally, anything to do with transport. So I think there's a danger that we think of cyber, the way that it's presented in this report, not the way you think about it. The two things are different, obviously. But the way that the risk is presented here suggests that everything's okay, and the outside world suggests everything isn't okay. And I think that's my challenge. It's not something that you can necessarily resolve with okay, I'll do X or I'll do Y. But I think just as a way of thinking about that particular risk, I share that as an observation more than anything else.
I'm sorry, I just need to leave for 1 minute. I will be back very short.
Bless you. It's just if that should be a challenge, I think that the organisation should be prepared to respond to. You don't necessarily, doesn't mean you have to change anything, but I think if I was in your position, I would have a response ready for that challenge. I think that would be my first port of.
Yeah, absolutely, Graham. I completely agree with you. I take it. Me and Danielle have discussed this regularly at the risk meetings anyway. If things have changed, and we need to just be sort of wary. But the way I treat it and the way my department treat it is generally is very important, and that's why we do things like these penetration testing events. That some people might look at that and say you don't really need to have that done with the data you hold, but I think it's vitally important that we just make sure we are covered and we have that view of someone trying to break in.
I think also to add to that, Graham, I think I get your point completely, and I just wonder whether it's about how we presented. You know, it is well managed. We believe, but so we're not underplaying the risk. But I wonder whether we are presenting the risk and our management of the risk in the right way, and that would change the emphasis completely, I feel. So I think it's a very good point, and I think we should take that away, and we will give it some thought as to whether we're pitching it at the right level and or demonstrating the serious nature of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Bless you. Sorry.
Can I just...
Sorry, Joe, I didn't see
mention one thing. Sorry, yeah, it's gone down and it's gone up again. I just wanted to say, because I know you mentioned, Danny, that we do have insurance in place, and I was wondering about, from that point of view, I'm assuming we've assessed the level of certainly the financial risk to us of a cyber attack that disables us or breaches GDPR, and I just wondered whether that is something, that work, if that work's been done, is something that would support our assessment of that risk. So we've obviously thought about what the cost would be, what the implications would be, and decided on an appropriate amount of insurance, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
For me, that ties into the size of the risk, I suppose, to some degree.
Yeah, that's part of what the risk register is based on, is around that kind of the cost factor in, and that's why it falls into that bracket. And it might seem to score a bit lower, as kind of Graham's pointed out there. But it is something that, because of our infrastructure being cloud-based and Microsoft kind of being the responsible party for hosting that, the risk of the kind of downtime and being wiped out is extremely low. So that the main part of that consideration is, like you said, fines for GDPR breaches and such.
Grand, good. I think it's probably sensible to call time on the discussion at that point, but thank you, Daniela and Danny, for presenting that.
Thank you.
Forward to the next deep dive. I can't remember what the topic is off the top of my head.
TFN off for the next one in July.
There you go. Good, excellent. Thank you, Danny, again.
Thanks, Danny.
Of course, thanks.
So is that risk complete, Daniela?
Yeah, yes, that's me done. Thank you.
Excellent. Right. So we have a bit of a quarterly operating report through to last December. Next.
Yes, that'll be me, Chair. Just let everyone know, I'm standing in for Darren Oldham today, who's the Director of Rail and Road. The last quarterly report that was issued to yourselves as part of this pack covers Q3, which is September to December. And it's the first one we produced under a new process, so you may see some changes to the report. The report and the process will continue to evolve and streamline, so hopefully the report will be an easy to read and informative document without being over onerous and being hundreds of pages long. The next report, covering January to the end of this month, is under development. And we will be publishing it in mid-April. So hopefully you'll notice that it'll be more relevant to the period just gone. We won't be waiting a couple of months. Going forward, from the start of the new financial year, the quarterly report will be focused on showing progress of delivering our TFM business plan, which is going to our board at the end of this month, in March, 20th of March. So it will be plotting our progress against that. However, we are an agile organisation, so if new emerging priorities do crop up that aren't in the business plan, we will still be able to report them each quarter. So you'll see what we're able to, the progress we're making on items such as, for example, last year, no one knew an emerging priority will be responding to the railway booking office closure proposal. So we'll be able to report things that emerge like that each quarter. I don't know if you've got any questions for me. I'm happy to answer them now, or please feel free to email me.
Joe, did you have a question, comment?
It was a very quick one, but it was more on the finance side, so unfortunately it might be Paul.
It's okay, because Paul wrote the finance side of it.
It was I just had a quick question around the comment around the underspend in relation to analytical support to the Department of Transport.
Yeah.
And it was just around, is that underspend, I suppose the best is a crystallised underspend, so the fact that it started, it wasn't paid until it's not roll over to years, just that it wasn't due until that point. So therefore, you know, it's not going to be accumulated. It's just that's what we've unspent. Makes sense.
Well, I mean, actually, so first of all, defence budget, 7 million. So as in, so it is 5 for year 1, 7 for year into year 2. It's going. That's the so. But the product has been delivered, so there will be bits of that. And interesting, and this is the we speak. They put in a fund one, a request of a fund one, means an element of it is that partially one. There's about half a million. Talk to the department. You know, take a strict defence budget, getting active, not confirmed earlier, directly affect the overall of that grant deliver activity. It's interesting, you know,
that if you like, it would go.
It's actually spend if the pro potentially community, it's because it put two delayed. That's and that's you need to have with the department is you're kicking them off between impact on ring-fenced. Yeah, so it's about
the question you have.
Keen early as possible. We've been asked, so we're now with people with an active budget, and procurement perspective, get the procurement on the 1st of. We can then what we that now because it could before we actually.
Yeah.
So so we're just the same thing with MPR team budgets, which we're better at in year 2 because we've had a year doing it now, and long may that continue.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, Caroline. We are slightly behind time, but yeah, I find that report actually really easy to read. I like the exec summary. I like the fact that it's structured by business priorities. Just a bit of feedback.
Thank you very much for that.
So, just on that report, Graham, what we'll probably do, as opposed to waiting till the next committee meeting to share it. I mean, I think because we share it with members as soon as it's ready. You know, and that. So I think we'll probably think about a way of getting. And it's back to your original comment: is what we don't want to do is bank all the papers up and you get the best part of 350 pages. If we can give you a link to a report, you know, and as an interim review, which is live and more meaningful, that would probably be a better way of communicating with members.
Can I chip in there? Part of
Yep.
the new process that I've set up is that the report will be published on our website. So people will be able to have an opportunity of looking at it as soon as it's published.
Are you charging for that, Caroline? Or...
No.
It's a freebie. Right.
It's a freebie.
Excellent. Good. Super. Thank you. Right, Paul, I think we are now into the area of external audit, completion statement and accounts, etc.
Thanks, Chair. So I'll give you a quick introduction to myself because it's the first time I'm attending this meeting. So my name's Ian Gilroy. I'm an audit manager. I'm working for Mazars, who are your external auditors. So I'm looking to see out the 22-23 audit and pick up on 23-24 and subsequent years going forward. Now, Daniel, who's going to be the one to sign the audit report, he sends his apologies for not being with us today. There's a diary clash that he couldn't avoid, unfortunately. So I'm here to present our revised audit completion report. So I'll take the report as having been read. It's like the audit completion report we presented back in September, but now this is updated. Now we've resolved the pensions outstanding item, for which there's been an adjustment to the accounts. And it also includes our value for money commentary. I think that's the other main change in the report now. That does show that there's been no identified significant weaknesses in Transport for the North arrangements. So I won't run through the full report. I'll just highlight specific areas from what I've just touched on there. So if I can direct your attention to page 62 of the agenda reports pack, that's about page 12 in our report, you'll see the conclusion on our pensions work. So there was a material difference identified between the old and the new actuarial valuation of TFN's net pension liability. This is as a result the actuary taking into account more up-to-date information when producing the revised valuation. Management were happy to take the adjustment, make the adjustment in the accounts, and you'll see on page 17 of our report that adjustment having been made. But Paul's going to likely touch on the details of this in the following agenda item. Now on to VFM. So this is the last area for me to comment on, really. What I'll do is I'll take you to section 7 of our reports. That's about page 22. So where we audit the statement of accounts, this is then the other side of our responsibilities as your auditor. Really, the key thing to highlight through the pages within this section is that no significant weaknesses have been identified. I won't go into the detail in the commentary given there's no significant weakness and it's fairly self-explanatory, but that's the main takeaway from our work here. So that's everything I wanted to present to you today from our report. Just to give you an update what this means for signing off the 22-23 audit. Once the revised accounts are approved, we'll look to sign our audit report fairly straight after, and this should bring our 22-23 audit process to a close and we can start thinking about 23-24. So I have to take any questions you've got, or whether that's now or over email, but for now I'll hand back to the chair. Thanks, everyone.
Ian, thank you. Bless you for sticking with the organisation for all of this time. How many times have we seen the accounts now? I can't remember. Just an obvious question from me to begin was just the your ability to complete your contracted activity, given the ongoing delay was 22-23. is there anything on the radar to suggest that this is likely to repeat for 23-24, or is it too early?
I think it might be a little too early. Just the nature of the issue in respect to pensions was very specific to 22-23 really. But I think we might need a bit more time to figure out what it means. Yeah.
Great. I know Joanna wanted to ask a question, I think.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Could you just give me a bit more detail about the material difference found for the pensions? Just a bit curious about why that's been found.
I can cover that if you'd like in the next item, if that's because it's the reason why the accounts were changed.
Yeah.
If that's okay, I could do it now if you'd like, and then it means that we could segue very into it. Essentially,
Either is fine. Either.
Okay, well, essentially where we are is that we, with the exception of the year ending March 23, we've always based our pension adjustments on what's called the draft information that's available in February. So February within the financial year to which it relates. So you get reports issued in February, which means that you can hit the deadline of a 31st of May draft account publication. But the acknowledgement is that you're using estimated actuarial reports or actuarial reports based on estimated headcount. Now, every year since we started, the external auditors do a review and they assess actual headcount in the year versus that estimate. And in each year, with the exception of the year ending March 23, there's been no material variation, so we've had no need to make an adjustment. This year, because what we've done is we've systematically recruited, so we've had a net inflow of people from those. So the estimates would assume some people come, some people go, but we've actually had a net inflow of people, and as a consequence, the review that they've done this year, or the year related to the year March 23, has identified a material difference between the estimated headcount and the actual headcount, and as a consequence of that, the assets and liabilities that go with those real figures are different, and therefore, and statute says that if they're materially different, then you need to process the adjustment. The fact that it from a set of accounts, it doesn't. All it really does is it just changes a pension liability figure in the balance sheet, and it changes the reserve accordingly. It's a very routine statutory adjustment, but it's a statutory adjustment in itself. So we had this discussion with Ian and the partner, and he said, well, unfortunately, we all agree it doesn't mean anything, but statute says you've got to do it. So that's where we are. So, and I think in terms of going forward, what we'll do is that you can also get, the point is getting two sets of reports, one based on February and one based on actual, means you pay twice. But I think what we'll do is we'll probably do that going forward. So we will know earlier whether there's a material adjustment. So when we come to we will have established whether there's a material adjustment, and if there is, we'll process it. So when we get to September, we wouldn't be faced with this situation again, essentially.
Okay, that sounds like a very reasonable way forward. Thank you for that.
All right.
Thanks, Joanna. Thanks, Ian. Good, Paul. So we're on to, I know Lisa is down as the author. We're on to year-end statutory.
I've kind of done it. If that's sorry for stealing your thunder there, Lisa. I probably should have not jumped in and said Lisa could probably explain that.
Not to worry.
Yeah. So in essence, that's what it's saying is, we produce a set of accounts we did draft accounts on the 31st of May. The accounts that we took to the board in September was on the understanding that the pension fund, the general fund, had not been signed off by Marshouse, who were also the auditors of the external fund. So there was a risk that in the sign-off of the fund and the review that they perform, there could be an adjustment required, and lo and behold, there was. So we acknowledged the fact we needed to process it. So that's where we are, and the net effect really is effectively it's £750,000 of the reserve and £750,000 of the pension liability, albeit that's made up of two components. There's a sizable increase in assets and a sizable increase in liabilities, but liabilities are slightly higher than the assets by a net of 750,000. So Doesn't mean anything from the operating perspective, doesn't affect our funding environment. So it's more of a routine, well, not a routine, it's just a statutory adjustment that we have to process. So, and I felt it was useful, and apologies, Graham, for the volume of papers, but I think sometimes being able to demonstrate that the changes are limited to the areas to which they relate, I thought would give members an assurance that said we can see exactly what you've changed and why you've changed it, and that it is limited to the area that you've said. I think sometimes just giving a set of accounts and saying, look, these are final, the first thing someone says is, well, what's changed? So we kind of thought giving you both a changed version and the final version would be helpful. But I appreciate that means that you get another 100 pages of the document.
Get to read it twice. I mean, that's the advantage.
Perhaps I shouldn't have included the final version. That's probably what I should have done.
Yeah. No, the track version was very helpful. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. My question isn't really regards figures, facts and figures. It's to do with just page 28. I notice you've got a counter fraud plan, which is mentioned in the governance statement. This is only my second meeting. I've not seen anything on fraud, but how would fraud be reported to this committee, and who investigates fraud? That's my question, really.
I can't see exactly which page you're referring to. Is it a particular? Is it part of the narrative statement? It's part of the governance statement, wasn't it? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I think it was on page 28. It doesn't really matter what page, I suppose. It's just that you've got a counter fraud plan, which I would expect.
Yeah.
It was just in terms of audit updates, and I'm assuming you've not had any major frauds recently, or none that I'm privy to. But who would do the fraud investigation under that plan? If unfortunately you did suffer a fraud, who would do the investigation? That's just really it's just a general question, really.
I must admit, off the top of my head, I don't have the answer, which is actually probably more reflective of the fact that we've never had a fraud. So, and which is, touch wood, probably a good place to be. I'm pretty sure if I looked at the Constitution, it would probably point me towards the, probably the monitoring officer and the Section 151 officer would probably step in and have a duty in relation to appropriately investigating the fraud, whatever that might mean. So it would depend on the nature. So I think the Constitution would cover it. In terms of review of the policy, there's a policy that I think we reviewed it probably 2 meetings ago, and we would systematically review the anti-fraud policy and its appropriateness with you. And that would also encompass an opportunity for us to convey fraud, if there is any fraud. And I think as part of the governance statement, I think we make a fraud statement, which is to say that there have been no frauds throughout the year, or certainly we do it as part of the representation letter that we send to the external auditors to make sure the accounts are signed, is that we would state, are there any frauds throughout the year, yes or no, and management would make that would make that statement. So I mean, touch wood and fingers crossed there haven't been any, but that's not to say there won't be. And what's interesting is if a fraud to us would be catastrophic, because a financial loss to us is we're fully grant funded. All the activities that we do are supported by the department. So I'm not sure how they would respond to say, well, we've got less grant than we thought we had because there's been a fraud. Can we have some more, please? That's not really a conversation I would ever want to have. And hence we've got very, very tight controls in relation to tight financial controls. And some would argue they might be even over engineered, but I'm more comfortable to absolutely minimise the risk of financial loss as a consequence of being very tight, just because we can't, there's no mechanism for us dealing with it, really.
Thank you.
Good question. Joe, is it something that we can pick up offline? I'm just conscious of how much time
it's very, very quick, and I just wanted to say to Paul that in my opinion, controls can never be over the top. That's all.
Yes, completely agree.
Paul has clearly got a whole category of controls under the heading of fingers crossed and touch wood, which I don't think we want to go there at all, do we? Can we just look, Andrea, if you're still with us, just to put some signposting in the minutes, just to Richard's point about responsibility for investigation specifically, because that would just help us resolve that.
Yes, will do.
Good. So internal audit, I believe, is we are challenged for time. We always seem to be challenged for time when we get to internal audit, which is entirely unfair. Sorry. We've got quite a bit of internal audit material. I did want to start by saying thank you for sharing both the emerging risk view and other sort of governance and engagement related information. I think that's always helpful for members to digest that. And just before you start, Alex, just on the risk report narrative, Daniela, one of the things that I think was raised already, can't remember by who, I do apologise, just providing some additional signposting in that narrative around the reports that you've had through, like the RSM Emerging Risk Report, in the period since the last report. So it just provides a bit more of an updated, as well as this is what we've done to the risk scoring. These are the sources of information that we've had available to us in the period. I just think it sort of makes it more complete, I guess.
Yeah, we can use that as part of the exec summary in the future if needed.
Yeah. Good. Sorry. So I think, Alex, it's straight over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So I will pull out the key points just in regards to the first. Can you hear me? So my headphone wasn't fully on then, so apologies. In regards to the first paper, we've got our progress report. Just to pull out the key salient points, we've finalised 2 reports. We've got one review which is in progress and has been debriefed this week, which is around value for money and procurement. So that will come to the next meeting alongside your annual summary. In regards to the rest of the progress paper, really just to pull out, obviously we continue to monitor themes at section 2.2. Clearly, obviously there's some that come through which are specific to information technology. Obviously we have them as a separate line, but it doesn't indicate, as I said, in terms of the overall general picture of the themes, but we continue to monitor them year on year for your consideration. As Graham, you've mentioned, there are a couple of briefing documents. One is around our global internal audit standards, just to recognise, obviously, we're reflecting the standards. It's been incorporated into our own methodology, and there'll be continued publications throughout. There's a second one around perhaps more operational, but I think it just gives committee insight about the process we go through in terms of scoping our audits and the agreement and the importance and the agreement of actions that are taken forward. And then just finally, the risk radar. This is a publication that's going to be continued to be updated. It's a wider, it covers a whole range of sectors. And I think it is clients have found it quite, useful as a reconciliation, and it's good to see the healthy discussion around the risk register, particularly around cyber. Often it's the impact that it has and the consideration around how do you recover from a particular incident. Unfortunately, the likelihood continues to increase, as Danny's mentioned in his presentation. We've always got to to keep on top of what's happening within the sector and wider as well. So I think it shows that healthy discussion that's been had. I'll pause if anyone's got any questions on the progress paper. If not, I'm happy to move on to the next paper. No, no comments. No, that's
fine. Yes.
That's fine, no problem. Thank you very much. So the next paper you have in your pack is our internal audit plan for 24-25. So for those that have not seen the paper before, the layout is we highlight the areas for consideration for 24-25. We also include the strategy, so you can see what's been covered previously against your particular risks, and also forward looking, so a 3-year strategy. What I would say in terms of obviously the areas that have been highlighted, as you know, we have flexibility in year, so if one of your risks changes, we will consider having that flexibility to revisit the audit programme. The 4 areas that have been put forward were 3 areas plus the follow-up were put forward through circulation for committee members at the last meeting, just as a sort of signposting of the potential areas, and we've had further discussions with Paul, Daniela and colleagues in terms of the coverage. So what you'll see is obviously the high-level scopes, the risks that it's attached to, and also the timing of when these audits are due to take place. It also includes our internal audit charter, again, our roles and responsibilities, which we ask for approval. So today we're asking for approval of the areas that have been considered, whether you think they're the right areas from a committee's perspective, and then we can obviously take forward in terms of the more detailed scoping as part of that. I'll pause that stage. I'm happy to take any questions anyone may have. Thank you.
Well, I'll start and give others time to plan a question, maybe. So I did wonder whether two points. One is I did wonder whether we'd allowed ourselves sufficient time between the co-sponsorship audit and then the TAME audit, conscious that some of the actions from the first audit might impact what we looked at or how we looked at things in terms of the second audit. That might be my misreading of the connection between the two, but there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of time if there were actions that were related. That's my point.
I'm more than happy to respond in terms of that. Obviously, we've put indicative timings down, Graham, so more than happy to take that offline, look at what works, and Paul, again, with colleagues, we can certainly just to make sure we shape the timing of those particular actions if you feel it does have an impact. So I'm happy to take that forward.
I'm happy to come in there if you want, but I think with the two, so we've got NPR co-sponsor and we've got NPR TAME, so there is a linkage, but they are 2 different areas as well. So the associated actions that we could take out of one, we would then align to 2. So I think the timing should still be okay as they are. It shouldn't be too much of a problem.
I think, as Daniela said, that the first one is more about a governance vehicle. So is the co-sponsorship arrangement of the NPR programme working as we would want it to work? The second one is around the department this is the link into the point that Joe mentioned before. So the department have given us £5.7 million to support the assurance work and the modelling work in relation to the NPR programme. So the items 2's output would, to a certain extent, feed into the general function of item 1. But item 1's more about governance, and item 2 is more about actual product, and is the product producing what it should do. So there is a very clear distinction. We just probably need to articulate it better in the plans.
Thank you. My second point was in relation to the offer review. I think the way that it's currently described, do we have the resources necessary to deliver the offer? I think it's more about, do we have the capabilities to deliver the offer? From my I know it's only a word, but we could easily get misdirected, I think, if we focus just on, do we have the necessary resources? So I think there's a capability point in there. I think more importantly, I just wonder what the output of the audit would be, because are we expecting the organisation to reconsider its direction of travel based on the outcome of the review? I mean, I welcome strategic level reviews. I welcome audits of strategy, but if this is a direction that the organisation is going in terms of seeking to develop something which has an attraction beyond its original ambition some years ago, what is the audit there to do? Is it just to determine whether we've got the right sort of skill set to deliver what we say we can offer, or is it something more strategic?
If I could just come in on that then, Chair, I think it's an interesting one, this one, is that what we will have, the department have given us, they gave us best part of $721,000 721,000 for this year and 721,000 for next year to support the TFN offer. What this will be about, well, how have we set ourselves up and how are we delivering in relation to meeting the expectations of that grant, and are we set up well to deal with it going forward? What we've found is very interesting. We've been inundated with the requests. I mean, which is actually hardly surprising, because if you think about it, people can get a quicker answer through us because we've been through the mechanism and we've got the tools in place. So in terms of supporting LTAs, there's a lot of requests that we actually can't do all of them. And if you think about it, the more it becomes publicised, the more interesting and more requests we're going to get. So it's going to be around, have we got good, robust processes for dealing with requests? How are we prioritising? How are we delivering? And are we ultimately doing what the department wanted us to do? I'm very keen for it to be reviewed because I see it as an area of growth. I do think it's because it's good value for money. I mean, why would you get another STB or another local authority going through the same journey that we've been through when we've got a modelling team that's got, full, great models and great systems and great access to them that's producing the evidence that's required for business cases. So the view is, if we could do it a lot cheaper and a lot quicker, would it not make more sense for us to do that on behalf of other entities? So I think it's the right way, and that I'm hoping that the audit will support that.
Good, thank you, appreciate that. Kevin.
Yeah, just to say that I think the three proposed audits are the right ones. That they're subjects that we've discussed many times here, I think, over the last couple of years. So it feels appropriate that we should be putting these under a bit more scrutiny through the internal audit plan. Just a thought, really, in terms of the timing around the TFN offer. Presumably, Paul could put and colleagues put a bit more meat on the spec for that internal audit, and maybe we could look at that at the next meeting, because there would be sufficient time, I guess, really, looking at the timeline. So if we have got some concerns about the scope of that particular IA, then presumably we could have a quick look at that at the next agenda.
I think as well, Kevin, it's useful timing because we've got a deep dive on the TFN offer in July, so that could help into feeding some of the questions around the sort of report as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. Did you have a question, Joe?
No.
Sorry,
no,
you're illuminated for some reason on my.
Am I?
It's maybe it's just the tech. Maybe it's just the tech. I don't know.
I don't think I've got. No, I've not got my hand up.
Right, Brad. Good. Thank you for that. Always useful to look in more detail at the plan. I think, Alex, it's back to you. I know you've got a couple of reports in the pack.
I have, yeah. So just reverting back to the 23-24. So the first report, again, I'll take them as read. This is around mental health and wellbeing, and we've provided substantial assurance in this area with one low action, which was around training, just refresher training for line managers. But just to draw out, obviously, just some background in regards to this review, recognising if you go to the Risk Radar and other publications, there's a lot of, I guess, attention to staff wellbeing, particularly as we've come out of the pandemic. So I think it's an important area to obviously look at. Clearly, we've included some of the statistics around sickness, and obviously, your rolling obviously figures in regards to that. But what you'll see is the audit gives you context around what the wellbeing programme is, what the framework is, what the support is in place, whether that be through the HR and skills team, your EAP, your surveys have been obviously adapted to make sure you're capturing information around wellbeing, and obviously the Be Supported team. So as I said, overall, and recognise, I think, in every audit we do have to recognise, as we've mentioned all the way through the meeting, is the size and scale of the organisation. It's got to fit for the organisation. And I think it's fair to say, there's a robust framework in terms of the support that's provided to staff, and from that perspective. Well, Paul's happy to take any questions anyone may have. Thank you.
Carry on, Alex.
No. Excellent. Right, move on to the next one. So next one is the IT Access Management Security Review. Again, I think it's fair to say we've probably talked quite a bit. Danny's probably covered some of the key elements within the deep dive, and obviously discussions around cyber risk. So we've included for low and for medium actions within the review. It's been conducted by our technology risk team, and it builds on work that's been done previously as well in this area. So obviously the committee will have seen the reports that we've done previously. What it does do, and you'll see within our opinion, there were some areas where we've had good discussion around some of the actions that have been taken, and some actions that have been taken as we've done the audit as well. So that's why you'll see, in terms of the opinion, it does reflect that, as we've discussed, it is a high risk area. So actually those things have been taken on board and taken seriously. And in terms of the actions that have been agreed, most of them have got March and April to complete. So again, you'll see the completion of those actions and embedding those actions through our follow-up work, which obviously you've seen in our 24-25 plan. But the actions, particularly in regards to medium actions, are around access by third parties, user access reviews, and contractor accounts. And then obviously around policies and procedures, which we've touched upon obviously through some of these things through the deep dive. It does obviously recognise a number of the positive elements, as Danny mentioned, about the MFA, Microsoft as well. All of those things help to continue to continue with it, to strengthen the framework that you've got. Clearly, every organisation, the likelihood of attack, every committee I go to, you're hearing stories. So I think it's something that just has to continue to evolve, recognising obviously the threats that are there. And I think you can track that through obviously your risk register and the controls and the assurances that you're putting in place. I'll pause that stage. I'm happy to take any questions anyone may have. Thank you.
I think we're good. Thank you, Alex. Oh no,
excellent.
Richard. Sorry, Richard, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just drop my hand. It isn't related to the access controls, but it is in a way related to what I mentioned before with regards to fraud. I get the audit with regard to checking disabled accounts and that revocation of accounts. And the question I put on my emails before was to do with security, basic baseline security checks on staff. Now, I know approximately 100 staff, and I think the feedback was that we don't deal with sensitive data in terms of children's and adults and medical records and so on and so forth. So maybe there's not the need for doing that. But if some organisations will recommend or will enforce that all members of staff have at least a baseline security check, because you know, if they're coming into the organisation, regardless of position, that they can access lots and lots of stuff, data, contracts, funding streams. I was more concerned about, in terms of security clearance of staff, wasn't to do with adults and children, obviously, because that's not your business, but accounts payable or payroll or key areas. So my question was, and it may not be for you, Alex, maybe for Paul, in terms of has Transport for the North ever considered any staff security baseline checks or taking that one forward in people in high risk positions, whether they have a higher security standard? Because it does play into your audit, Alex, that if the people in the organisation using the systems aren't baseline checked, then access controls are a secondary issue, because you know, they're in the organisation. So that was my question. It might be something we want to take offline, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I think it sort of dovetails with the world that Danny was talking about earlier as well, which is insider threat, be that intentional or unintentional. And I think the point about risk-based controls, I think that's really important in terms of how we think about applying, how the organisation thinks about applying controls around access, for example. And then, of course, you've got the added complication that what do you do with your existing employees who might well refuse to cooperate with? You know, it isn't an easy area. It doesn't mean that we should avoid it, but yeah, I think a risk-based approach to the threat posed by unintentional or intentional acts, I think, is a good shout.
You're on mute. Sorry, Paul, you're on mute.
Yeah, so I think Joe's hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of link into, because I think you were talking about DBS checks, were you, Richard? And I'll be honest, I've always worked in treasury, so been responsible for payments leaving the business and so on. I don't think I've ever had people DBS checked for those types of jobs. I've been DBS checked myself, but that's been for slightly different roles or specific organisations. But I think from my point of view, and hopefully Paul's going to tip in with this, is that if you've got the correct controls, no one person should ever be able to do anything, regardless of the background, regardless of whether they're desiring to do something fraudulent. The controls are what are there that are designed specifically to make sure that they can't act alone, I suppose, or that there is always some sort of oversight and always some sort of audit, I suppose. But perhaps Paul wants to come in on that.
Oh no, Joe, everything you said I completely agree with. You know, controls are not people specific. They're controls to prevent anybody, whether they, if somebody had the intention to do something, could they? And then the answer's got to be no, because the control environment prevents them. So, I sign off all payments. Would you get an organisation that most FDs sign off most payments? Well, possibly not, but we can. Because of our size, and that's something that I'd like to do. I sign off a bank rec. Now, some would say that's a bit over the top, but to be quite frank, knowing that your ledgers and your bank accounts are aligned in similarity is a key control. So yes, to completely support what you said, Joe. In terms of, I think we'll take your point away, though, Richard, because I think what we do is we should make the assessment to say, are we satisfied that we've doing the right checks on all areas, and I think we just need to have that review and be comfortable, as opposed to going, well, you know, the nature of our business is that we don't have things like that. But, you know, the business can change slightly. You know, we're sharing data now, sharing more data than we were originally. So perhaps at least asking the question is something that we should consider. Well, definitely should consider.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Stephen, there's...
Sorry, the other point about things like DBS checking is that it only gives you a limited view at a particular point in time. So you can get somebody, you know, DPS checked 10 years ago. It doesn't tell you an awful lot about their motivations today, and that's the.
I think for me, it's around. I think it's if I'm thinking back, there's like a risk pyramid, and one of those things is opportunity, and the key thing that you have control over as an organisation is the opportunity for somebody to act on, you know, fraudulently. The other things, such as their personal circumstances, to a degree you don't have control over. But the things that can be controlled are that you know, limiting the opportunities to do it, and that's essentially what we need to focus on, I think.
Yeah, I'm just conscious, folk. We've got less than 10 minutes, and we've got 2 substantive items on the agenda to follow up with. So are we happy to leave that and move on?
I think Stephen's just got, if that's all right, Graham. I think Stephen's got his hand up.
Yeah, hi, I'm the head of HR at TFN. Just so in terms of the sort of control measures we have in place in terms of DBS, when we create a new role, we do review and assess as to whether it would be appropriate for a DBS check to be undertaken for any particular new role. And similarly, we'll do that review when a role is reviewed or amended. So we do have a process in place as part of our the development agreement and production of new amendments to roles to make that assessment. So a review process does exist as part of our normal HR process.
Right. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. Good, Alex. Back to you. Are we?
I'm all complete, I believe. So yes, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Appreciate the comments.
Bless you. Thank you. So we've got annual governance statement, and we've also got committee effectiveness to cover before we finish. Joanne, you're doing your governance statement, I think.
I am, Chair, yes. So I'll take that this paper is read, and one of the points I noted at the beginning of this meeting today, you wanted to know what was the difference in the partnerships arrangements. So I thought I'd just briefly inform you of what we've actually now included into the draft AGS for 23-24. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So first of all, what I've done is I've just put the scope of responsibility and the purpose of the governance framework at the beginning of the statement, and then I've produced a new at paragraph 3.0 a new chart has been prepared which sets out the governance structure, including the partnerships arrangements. So that is a new up-to-date chart, and it includes all the different boards in it. What I've then done is we've tweaked very briefly a little bit of the transport for the North Board, and that's to take into account that we're no longer going to have the LEPs going forward, so it mentions the successors. In terms of the Rail North Partnership, we've added some additional information regarding the Rail North Committee. For example, that it considers and advises the board on matters relating to rail franchises. We've also included as a new item, a new part, the officer reference group. We've included some wording on what the regional business units are. We've updated the Rail North Partnership Board. I've included some information on the Northern Powerhouse Rail Sponsor Board. And we've included then again information on what the exec board does. Also included further information on the Highways North Board, which wasn't previously in. And then that's what we've included. So we've included all committees so that all the partnership arrangements are shown. We've also prepared a new chart.
No, I did read in the last minutes. Now I didn't have time to check. I didn't make time to check against this version. So thank you.
I think next year going forward it might be each chair if we do a red version potentially. Then you can actually see where the amendments are. So then just very, very briefly on the report, we've got a little bit of work to do on this year's statement. Remember, we're going to the pub report in May, but what we're going to do is we're just to take an exit internally, regarding a review of the internal controls for the government framework. So there's just a little bit to do on that, for which is in hand in this meeting today.
I think it's an easy to read. I like the recent made to the evidence in the. I think that helps in demonstrating that the operating intended, simply to say what the control, I think, is a big input.
So it's on that. Got 4 next report.
Yeah, that's a way to limit. John, you haven't got any. Yeah.
Any questions that please?
I think.
Okay. So, sorry, Chair. So is a monitoring effectiveness of the committee. This to member for this together work plan is going to do. So would have the surveys there to send to members and all we're going to start that week to ask for. I think I first for about the survey information. We get we'll review and we'll something committee would also effectiveness included it and as well. Design surveys, some assistance, but the question
supported. So
yeah.
If I'm
I Richard, I want to very much ribbon to really appreciate. Thank you.
No worries.
The only thing that Joanne went is some actually that some you're actually feedback of always worth if it's a question yes or no and not can be answered if includes a question they have to can be covered you know, question to the sufficient on kind of it's should you as well in starting these things get better.
Yes, that we taken this. We look back at these organisations make your point, Chair.
You one time last 40 is that steps are kind of included with so yeah.
The next steps are included. Would you like? Yes, they are included in the report. The next steps. Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Good. Bless you. Thank you. There is one more item. Sorry, Joanne.
So all I would say to the members is if you need any assistance or you want to discuss the two surveys, then please send me an email and I can go through them with you. So that offer is there for you as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Thank you. I think the final point, Paul, was treasury management, but there didn't seem to be an awful lot to cover on that.
That's it. Yeah, that's the point.
As we were then in terms of treasury management.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's the. I think we've got an obligation to report on it. So we've just reported to say that actually there's no material changes expected. So it ticks the box. That's it. With less and less cash now. The days of us being cash rich are going. Now rates have gone high and reasonable. We can do something. We don't have any cash left. So hey ho.
Well, I think we're all feeling that point. Excellent. Right, folks. Thank you. I think the next meeting is slated for July, something like that.
Friday the 19th of July, Chair.
Thank you, Andrea. Hopefully everybody's got that in their calendars. I'm pretty confident we'll have a vice chair by then. We'll see how we go. Good, splendid. Thank you all for your contributions and for getting through the material, and take care, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.